We have an august audience of 5 people. Welcome, everybody. It's raining. Everybody just decided to stay home or else watch us on TV. So I'll call this to order. Motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so let's go to item 3. Just as a reminder, for these, audience participation is welcome as we discuss a topic. We will be having the three-minute rule up here, as we discussed before. We'll talk about that more later for board meetings, just to get it all written. But with that, we got board business issues for consideration. Steve?
So I'll go down one at a time. Does that make sense? You want to vote on each one separately?
Sure.
Okay.
Walk us through.
A is the Osceola County impact fees. When we originally estimated these fees, we were looking at close to, I think, $60,000 of impact fees. It turns out we only have to pay an impact fee on the building. And Danny Bumpus, who's our owner's rep on this, has been working with the county back and forth. He's asked multiple times and then said that this is the impact fee for that construction site. So that's what we're asking you to approve today. It's been part of this project all along. We knew we were going to have to pay the impact fees. It looks like it's a significantly less amount than we originally thought we were going to have to pay.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one passed.
Okay, item B, you have some really nice site maps that Todd Haskett's put together for you. Shows you some placement. It's within your overall board packet.
I don't remember seeing a site map.
I didn't know how I didn't make it. I apologize. Oh, is it done?
What are we looking at?
You can click it on the book.
What date was the
I did.
board packet? You're not-
Oh, I think that was it right.
Okay,
There
that
it
one
is.
there, okay.
Just hit the link.
That's the only one I remember seeing.
Well, so we had the map that showed where the location of all the different items, and then there was a complete itemized listing of all the different benches and trash cans and doggy pots and picnic tables that are placed throughout the athletic facility complex. So Todd's here if there's any questions on these.
I had a couple of questions. On the lightning warning system for $18,500.
Yeah. So this is not a warning system, it's a prediction system. So what it does is it reads the electromagnetic energy in the air and in the ground, and it will predict with a 99.6% accuracy rate, I believe is what they are touting, that lightning will strike within the next 12 to 20 minutes within a
2-mile radius
vicinity, right.
So this thing, does it have a warranty or anything? I didn't see that in the write-up. I mean, if this thing gets hit by lightning, what's...
So I use them in Seminole County. I know that they're popular throughout the state of Florida. I mean, we are in the lightning capital of the world here. These are wide open recreation spaces. If we allow the coaches and the event organizers to determine when they're going to get off the field, we're putting ourselves in a little bit of a risk situation.
So it is going to be our policy that if this thing goes off, play stops and everybody goes to safety.
And everybody has to take shelter.
And everybody will understand that as part of the rules for renting the place.
They will be. We'll ask that they be included in the rules.
So if one notice go out,
so the question, the notice it'll be part of their rental agreement with us.
Is there like a siren?
Yeah, so when it goes off, it'll give you a long horn. I think it's like 12 seconds long for the initial horn. And that's the take shelter immediately horn. When the readings are clear enough for it safe to play, you'll get 3 short blasts that will go off that will say it's clear to play. Now, we do have the issue of having a horn during lightning that could be loud, and we are in a bubble, so it will probably echo throughout the community, but
Which could be a good thing.
It is accurate. I mean, it is showing that lightning will strike within a 2-mile radius, and there's a little box that goes in the control room that will actually show you how many amounts of lightning strikes hit within the area. There's a software package that we can look on the computer.
That's fine. Kevin?
So I have a couple of questions. I think it's an excellent thing that we would need. I'm not seeing the exact dollar amount on it, and before I get to that, or while you find that, what is our procedure with lightning when we have our pools? And the reason why I bring that up is when you look at other communities, or if you even look at Disney as an example, the recreation department for Disney for their lightning, A, is more than 2 miles, I believe, and 2, they actually use an app called WeatherBug, which is a free app, and that's what our neighbors use, if you will. So I just want to make sure that right now, when we're spending a lot of money, that this is actually going to be worth it. And 2 miles is, I think, kind of close when it comes to getting all the kids off that field in a timely manner, the way that Central Florida is. So I just want to make sure that whatever the dollar amount is, it's worth it, and there's no other
Dollar amount's
alternative.
$18,500.
18,500 is the dollar amount, but to answer your second question, so what it's telling you is that within the next 12 to 20 minutes, lightning will strike. It's guaranteeing you that lightning will strike within the next, within a 2-mile radius. So it's warning you, it's giving you a 12 to 20 minute lead time that within a 2-mile radius, lightning is going to strike.
No, I understand. I'm just saying there's a free app that is used for the same thing. So I just want to make sure we understand that we're using the best items for it.
Most municipalities throughout the area utilize this door guard system. They've implemented it in all their park systems, soccer fields, baseball fields.
Golf courses.
I understand, and it's not no disrespect, but we bounce back and forth, management bounces back and forth a lot between, we're not a municipality, we are a municipality, so that I understand.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
just
think
looking
it's
at
as
it.
much of a management thing. I think it's the way that the board chooses to govern. And we have become more municipality-like. We're up to nearly 12,000 residents within Celebration.
I'm not disagreeing with that, that's what
So-
I've been trying for, it just,
Yeah, I can tell you from a best practice standpoint why I always use them. I mean, I'm a 20-plus year Parks and Recreation professional. I've used them because it takes the guesswork out of the user's hand. When we rely on end users to determine whether or not it's a risk, they're going to always push on the side of trying to get the game.
David, you?
Yeah. So is this also integrated into a notification to management in town hall?
That will be notified that there's lightning strikes.
That,
There
in
is
other
a-
words, if it happens, if this facility blows that horn there, will someone here be notified? And then that could affect all the other pools as well as follow-on enforcement to make sure that people are following that horn and moving off the field.
Yeah, now, so there is a notification, I believe, that we could get on our computers to let us know that
That's what
the
I'm-
system has gone off.
Software-
But we
software
can
link.
also have a phone system where they call us here at Town Hall and let us know it's gone off, and then we could implement that throughout the pools.
I mean, I'm thinking of one integrated system that,
Yeah, I think one of the things the Recreation Committee's been talking about is staffing at the athletic facility at the complex.
Right.
And that there would, this is a fully managed facility, so there would be a person on site. That person would have telephone capability, obviously like a park monitor would, and could certainly inform whoever needs to be informed if there was a need to.
Absolutely.
Let me make a suggestion in light of Kevin's response. What if we authorized up to the $67,555 that's here, but we asked the technology committee to work with them a little before we make the $18,500 purchase and come back and say, okay, this is the best, because I don't know what best practice is, I have no clue.
I
But
think
This
Tech
is
and
best
Rec can work
practice.
together on this.
If we did Tech and Rec working,
It may be better suited to the Recreation Committee, who's done a lot of research and looking into how other parks are run. And they have to look at municipalities, because this is very close to how a municipality is going to be running.
Steve, I think Mary Ann might have some insight too because of the Girl Scout
This
requirements.
is the best practice. And one of the primary reasons, above and beyond health and safety, that I would be in favor of this particular system is having a system like this and not relying, the app is great, but there's a time problem, right?
Okay.
The information doesn't move as rapidly. This is an instantaneous notification that you have 12 to 20 minutes to get the kids off the field, is a liability risk mitigation factor. If a child does get struck by lightning on our field, and we didn't have this, we're gonna have a bigger problem. If we were waiting to see what the app was going to say, well, that doesn't help that parent. So I would say that rather than get cumbersome about the decision, this is a best practice and we should adopt it.
I understand, can we follow up with the insurance carrier and make sure that this would be appropriate as well? You know, because they might turn around and say, no, we need 5 miles for a field. But my bigger concern is, what have we applied to the pools? And I don't think we've applied anything, so let's see if this can go greater than 2 miles.
Did you say there's a louder horn option?
No, it's a loud horn. I mean, it's
It's
gonna,
already a loud horn?
yeah, we're gonna hear it. And
Because
again,
I
I don't
like the
think
idea
it's not we have to understand it's not a warning system. It is a prediction system, and they have a patent on this as a prediction system that is telling you, within 12 and 20 minutes, it's gonna be within 2 miles. So therefore, it's picking it up further out than 2 miles. It's just giving you a lead time warning.
Yeah, it does
I think
pick
the
up at
school's 5
15
miles,
miles.
isn't it?
15 miles?
15 miles within a 2 mile
15 miles away.
location.
Okay. Recreation Committee, Technology Committee, Town Hall, we'll approve up to the 67.7. You guys can have a conversation, certainly make Mary Ann part of it. Let's not let this drag on 9 months. Let's just finish the conversation, and if a little bit better one gives us a little bit more coverage.
Yeah, this is the first I'm hearing about it, so that's.
So, no, and everybody, that's why I brought it.
And the timeline should be any discussion completed by the time these
Next board
facilities
meeting.
open.
Well, next board meeting.
I think that's.
Well,
The late- at the
I
latest.
think we just need
timeline.
clarification. If you're approving the money, we're waiting then for the tech and the rec committee to say, this looks like a good expenditure. We don't have to come back then for another approval, right?
That would be my
That's how I
recommendation.
agree.
We're approving the expenditure, we're just asking the Tech and Rec and involve Mary Ann to come back and say, everybody's comfortable, this is a good solution versus item B.
In a timely way.
I can say I would not be recommending if I didn't have personal experience utilizing it. I had it in all my parks in Seminole County. It's a
Okay,
good process.
so the motion is to approve up to $68,000 with the Tech, Rec, and Mary Ann to get comfortable with management on the best implementation of the solution.
And I'd like to see if we can add what David said, because I was gonna bring the point up too, is that I think this needs to be done by the time those fields are open, because what's the lag time here for people that are using the fields before you decide what system you want to put in? And that could lag on, I don't know how long that research will take. But you're going to have people on the fields out there. It sounds to me like before this gets put in place, how long does the installation take?
It doesn't take them long to get
No,
it
you
up
have to
and
order it, though.
installed. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
it's-
get it ordered and.
There's
So
about a
it's-
6-week lead time on.
Okay,
the
so
system.
And if we're looking at an end of May, early June start time, we're looking at getting right into lightning season when the
Okay,
facilities open.
motion made. Second?
What's the motion?
Second. What?
The motion is that we approve up to $68,000 as regards the lightning warning system, the recreation, technology, and Mary Ann will work with CCMC management at this recommendation versus another one. They are empowered to make a decision. They will just tell the board what they decide, and we're striving to implement this when the field's open, but it's certainly to get it done on a timely basis. Perfect. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Brian made the motion.
Kevin seconded.
If you can tell us, for Rachel's sake, because. I got it. Okay.
Rachel wouldn't have doubted it's me. Okay, the second thing I had on this approval list here, though I want to at least ask a question about, is we have 10 security cameras. Is that enough cameras? That'll be coverage of all 3 fields? I just want to understand.
Yes, starting off with 10 cameras. The DVR system that we would purchase would be a 16-camera system, so you can expand it. Patrick and I went out and looked at the building, and that's where the majority of the security cameras would be, around the concession building. They're not necessarily to view all the fields. There would be a couple of cameras going the whole length of the field, but not anything that would point right at players and activities going on there. So it would catch people coming
So if someone,
through the gate system.
so my specific question, someone decides they want to take the Celebration logo off, and they climb the fence, and they get in there and rip it up. Do we have that on camera or not?
No, no.
I
You would have,
should be on
if they
camera.
come from the parking lot, you would have the culprits coming across the fence or whatever. But
At
you would need a whole lot more than
$400 a
10
camera, I would rather have 12 or 14 than 10 cameras, and I'd like to actually, this feels, it's a wonderful field. Teenagers are going to be teenagers, or somebody else is going to be somebody else. I'd like, to sit here and say that we've got $20,000 worth of damage or $100,000 worth of damage. Someone called Jerry and gee, we saved $400 is just not the answer I think we should have. Let's get proper coverage, isn't it? David?
Yeah.
I would agree.
And seeing
It's a
Jerry
safety
here,
issue as well.
has the sheriff's office done an assessment of the area to help guide numbers of cameras, to Brian's point?
No, we haven't had those conversations.
And I know that's.
I don't know if they offer service. Does Jerry
I know they offer
services?
security consultation.
Jerry offers the
I think we can
service.
figure out on our own how to aim cameras and get full coverage, but we'll certainly
Seek some
entertain their
advice.
thoughts.
The other thing that I would maybe look into is if the CDD ever agrees to a connection from the North Village, is that going to leave that open for people entering from 192 or anywhere else? Would that area also need to be covered?
So we'll even deal with that more, but I think we need a motion to, and I'm thinking out loud here, you can tailor it for me. We need a motion to expand the number of cameras to be greater than 10 so that we have proper coverage of the entire field, so that we could have an incident while play is going on, we could have a nighttime vandalism issue. We want to be able to see and have
Absolutely.
recorded what is occurring.
Can I adjust that to just,
Sure.
as opposed to proper coverage, full coverage?
Full coverage.
Because I think proper is open to interpretation, so full coverage of the complex.
Do you
I
want
would
to
second
approve
that.
a dollar amount? So we can work within that?
We got 10 cameras at 400 apiece. I mean,
You've already approved that 4,000, so you want to?
yeah.
What are you thinking of those things?
How many, how many,
How about if we come back to you with a proposal that
Yes.
would be encompassing those?
yep,
That
and
is the best way to do it.
Yeah, I would agree.
And what camera system is it?
Oh, it's through CJC, that's who we've been using for our camera systems, but it's Hike Vision is the systems we
What
use
is it?
throughout.
Something?
Hike Vision?
Hike Vision?
Hike Vision.
okay. So we will wait for you to come back to us, and then we'll deal with that one. Item C.
We have a motion, don't we?
We did a second.
We didn't do it.
Oh, a motion on the cameras?
Do you need?
I thought you were going to come back.
Well, they're going to bring it back, and then we'll have a motion and a vote.
And also to cover, my main concern is the bathrooms and you
Yeah.
never know.
Interior and
Just for
exterior.
safety.
The building
Safety is
was
Cover the
the
bathrooms.
primary concern at the moment.
Outside the bathroom. I'm sorry. Outside the bathrooms and concession stand.
Certainly.
And as these, with Jerry's point, with Jerry's point about potential future linkage to North Village, and that was already raised at the CDD, apparently they have a proposal written on that, as I shared with the board, from having attended that meeting. Will this be expandable, meaning whatever outlets or fixtures, as we install it, is it done so that it's easily expandable?
We'll make sure it is.
Yeah, okay.
And the
That's part of the
CPD right
proposal.
now has a conceptual design and some estimates of what it would cost to do that boardwalk. I don't know that they have any type of motion or proposal for it to be approved at this point in time. I think they want to work with the county to see if there's any trail funding available.
Okay. Item C.
Item C is for approval for athletic equipment and then the part-time employees that we need to run the facility. So a conversation that took place with the Recreation Committee was, do we book the fields and have the end users maintain and set up for their events as we're currently doing, where they would paint their own field, put their own goals out? Or is it going to be a fully run facility? And they took a vote and asked that it be a fully run facility. So there's some cost involved in this being a fully run facility. We need to purchase the paint, the goals, the corner flags, all the items that will go along with being able to support tournament play and then our local league play. And then also to do that, we're going to need some staffing. It makes more sense for us to look at part-time employees because we're going to be open different hours. And to try and get someone to do 40 hours a week, 5 days straight, with 2 days off is going to be problematic for us to have all the coverage that we need. The other thing we're doing is we're taking best guesstimates at what type of tournaments we're going to have and what type of hours we're going to use. So we are a little bit more on the side of maybe overstaffing right now with the 3 part-timers. But if we approve this dollar amount for part-time staff, we'll only be staffing the hours that the facility's open. So if it's less than that, then that will come in under what that total amount is. So the total, if you can, this is really small, so let me try and make that a little bit bigger. So the total for the equipment is $73,110. The total for the 3 part-time staffing at about 30 hours a week for the rest of the year is $43,536.
Let me just say that in the Recreation Committee, they've spent an extraordinary amount of time with workshops and meetings trying to work through this. And part of the rationale for this equipment was, by having our own equipment and having people there on staff, we could move the equipment, not damage the fields by dragging soccer goals across the yard and so on. it also meant that in the rules and regulations, which the committee is now reviewing to prepare, it's very clear that there are different configurations of the field, and an applicant will have to identify the configuration and the equipment they want. It'll be set up in advance so that the field will be set by our representatives and not people coming onto the field who would be doing it haphazardly potentially. So I think that while it means an expenditure now for equipment and for staffing, given the value of the asset, it's a fairly modest expense to protect the asset against unreasonable wear and tear. And I think that was the view of the Recreation Committee, and I would endorse that.
And the other issue with this is right now we're asking that this be spent out of capital dollars because it's your initial upfront capital costs. We didn't budget for the part-time staff out of operating, so that would be requested out of capital through the end of this year. And then as we build the 2020 and on budgets, this will become part of operating expenditures.
I guess my concern with that is staffing coming out of capital. I don't, that doesn't feel right, and I'll leave that for Brian. Apart from that, the staffing that does happen, will that be reimbursed or covered in any way from the rental fee for that field?
There will be rental fees, and right now they're looking at basing those fees off of what other similar type facilities are charging. And then after we get a good year's worth of data, we can look at those similar charges and we can look at cost recovery. And then we can set some sort of methodology between the Rec Committee and the board on what we think that cost recovery looks like and what makes the most sense. And we can adjust fees and charges accordingly.
So Jackson, for the Recreation Committee, they're saying, or the number here is $43,000 for 6 months of additional labor. And I'm saying additional because that's not including Todd's time or anybody else's time that's involved in that current flow. Is that even going to be close to being recouped? Or is
I don't think there's any way to know, honestly. I think it depends on how much activity of outside events and tournaments happens, because that's when you need the most coverage. The reality is that Recreation Committee had a proposal at their last meeting on Thursday, Wednesday, whatever it was, from an adult soccer league in Celebration that would like to play 3 nights a week, 12 months a year.
Okay, that's great.
So I don't think there's any question that the fields will be in use as often as we want them to be in use. And so as a result, if we have a lot of chargeable activity, you know, tournaments or outside activities based on our agreement with the county and that priority usage, then I think we can easily recoup these costs. On the other hand, the committee, I think, has taken the view that they want to go slow in edging into this and not overwhelm the facility in its first couple of months. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dory, if I'm misreading that. But I think that the goal is we might start quieter and have less revenue in this first 6-month period than we would have a year later. So I think it's a reasonable guess, but I think it's a guess at the end of the day.
I suppose, I guess my biggest concern with this is a lifestyle event, if you will. It's recreation, it's activities, but it's not operated by an HOA. This is, we are supplying the location, the material, and the labor for somebody's business for their personal profit. So I want to just be very careful on how we are spending homeowners' monies to be a partner without any of the income for that. And that's, I mean, once upon a time, the league, you know, was in-house, and for whatever reason, that has then been contracted out. So I just want to evaluate the entire picture.
It's a little more complicated, I think. I mean, the more I've gotten into it, the more I've seen that we've got partner programs that we do share in revenue. I mean, everyone pays a fee based on whether they're a Celebration resident or not. And then we've got another tier, as you remember from the county agreement or proposed agreement, of outside groups. And then we've got sort of the wide outside, you know, the wide world of sports spillover kind of groups or tournaments. The committee has not yet, in the rules and regs, there's a big blank spot where it says rental fee all the way down. Because literally, the research that Brian was talking about comparing to where we are compared to other entities and fields and so on is still underway. I don't think there's any view that we would give the fields away for free without at least the payments that we've always required, even for the fields next door.
I wanted that on the record, just that we operate that.
Let me just see if I can Great conversation. I actually have two comments. I think I'm blind. I think the $73,000 needs to come out of working capital. This goes to we wanted working capital to pay to get these things operational once.
Yeah.
I think the $43,000 has to come out of the operating fund. When we did the budget for this year, we had some revenue in there, we had some expense in there, and we said we would be much wiser in October and November of this year when we did a budget. And we need to see the $43,000 of expense. And at some point in time, you're 100% correct. We need to be sitting here and we need to be saying, if we have, and I'm making these numbers up, if we have a revenue of $25,000 and we have expense of $100,000, this is upside down and it's costing $75,000 a year, people should legitimately complain. At some point in time, it needs to run much closer to break even to be right and fair, and that's why we're having the conversation that we're having with the county. So it would be my motion, or my proposal for us to consider would be that we have a motion that we accept the $73,000 as a payment out of working capital, because I think we have to do it right and we have to do it professionally, and we don't want somebody else tearing up the fields. And then the $43,000 would come out of operating funds for this year, with the understanding that we're going to have a very judicious budgeting process for 2020 around these fields and the revenue expectations and the expense expectations. And that would involve both management and the Recreation Committee.
I think it'll also be important too, if we already have an estimation as to how much it's going to cost, then the Recreation Committee can actually back in. Okay, well, if this is how much it costs to run the fields, how do we break that down based on time? So I think that'll be helpful for
I
them.
think you can also start then determining what that cost recovery number needs to look like. Is it 50%, is it 60%? And then you can say, let's set our fees accordingly based on some true numbers of rentals and.
Well, we had said we needed time to figure out what real demand was too.
But you also have, according to back to Kevin's statement, you got to go back to your recreation program plan that was approved by the board, I believe, in 16, 17. And there's a methodology there and a guiding principle of we're going to provide the highest level of programming that we can in celebration. And there's different ways to do that. It's either through partnerships, it's running it ourselves. So that's all determination of how you want to do it.
I don't want to argue that. David, any
Two
last
questions on the $73,000 out of the capital. One is how much of these, and it looks like most of them are one-time investments rather than recurring?
You're probably going to have to renew your flags every year or so. I mean, just some of these
So
items
flags
will get
in the
beat up,
line or whatever.
Right. Paint's going to be an
So
ongoing expense.
most of it is one-time expense after, and then there's going to be wear and tear. Okay. And then the other is, of that 73, so that adds to our total investment in the project. So we have I know
We had a
you made
contingency
a comment.
fund of $250,000. You just talked about how we saved $57,000 on assessment fees, so we've had pluses and minuses.
So this is bringing us up. I mean,
It's still
It's
like
part of
this,
that.
and it's gonna be like this until it's done. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I have a motion to approve the 73110 for the equipment
Second.
Out of capital.
out of capital.
Out of working capital.
Working capital improvement, start of capital.
And the $43,000 out of operating funds.
We're not doing them separate.
With the understanding that and this is part of the motion, with the understanding that in the 2020 budget, we will do a very careful budgeting of the revenue expenses related to the athletic comp fields. Do we have a second? Or we got a first?
Marion, second.
I did not, yeah, it was, Vaughn was.
Vaughn made the motion.
Vaughn made the
started it.
motion, I'll second the motion.
And just to clarify, 43,536 as stated on.
Okay. And any other comment?
That's an up to number there.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, so who's going to be responsible for moving these goals for between lacrosse and soccer?
The staff.
That's going to be.
That's the staffing.
That was the point of having the staff on, is that
Yeah, I know it's the
we
staff.
don't want to have the teams.
But there's no wheels, I just wanted to connect.
I think we did get goals with wheels.
But these say no wheels.
I think originally they talked about no wheels, but so the rec committee came back, they had a number of 60 set in their head, and I've increased that a little bit because I asked for the wheels. So it may just not have been changed properly, but the price should include the one with the wheels on it.
Item D.
My final comment really quick on equipment, the raker for the synthetic fields, that needs to be attached to a NEV. Will we be using a current NEV or Gator, whatever it is?
We'll be using
for that?
existing equipment right now, yes.
Okay.
And then if we need something new, we'll ask for it in next
Do you
year's budget.
think that's going to happen?
Not at this point in time, but if it does, we'll bring it back to you as soon as we recognize
It's
it.
a gift that keeps giving, isn't it?
D.
Item D is approval of a change order for pavilion and concession restroom buildings. This is just some touch-up stuff. There were some changes between TCC and what was originally designed. So we need to get this approved to finalize this. And Kevin and Jack were both part of the conversations. And Kevin, is there anything you want to add to this?
Do you have the gutters in here?
No, the gutters were separate. They didn't get those. I mean, he has an estimate to me, but I don't have an official change order quote back from him yet. So, good point. So, as Kevin said, it fluctuates up and down. There is one more that's around $5,000 for some additional gutters on the pavilion.
What I will say is there's always going to be one more. But on this stuff here, in our meeting last week, TCC and their requirements, the celebration company and their requirements, dragged us on and gave us expenses that really we have our own feelings on. The other item is the pavilion, the shade structure, I think we call it. The way that the roof is set up is there's no drainage, and it's going to flood, and it already is flooding the athletic field as well as the grass around it. And when the kids are running around on that wet grass, it's going to rip it up and destroy this beautiful sod. So,
And that's not included in this change order, though. That's yet to come for the next week.
So that's going to be coming, and it's going to be a couple bucks because we're requesting not only the gutter around it, but actually underground.
I think that's around $5,000 also.
Okay, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it then, but we know it's coming.
I just want to let you
No,
guys
that's
know,
fair.
next week or 2 weeks it'll be here.
Okay, item D, do we have the motion as read?
Motion to approve $6,760 out of capital improvement.
I'll second.
Any other conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, one thing I want to ask Steve is I would like, and this can be for the board, I want an email coming from Steve to the board. Where do we stand? We've used magic numbers like 4,250,000 or 4,000,300. I'd like to know where we at today. Don't give us the low number. Give us what is probably real based upon items that Kevin just said, and when is it going to realistically pay out? We paid at the end of March, I think, about 2.2 million. So are we going to pop a million, or over 3 months so that we have a good idea? It just affects how we think about things. That can be an email to the board, and then we'll tell the community when we come into a board meeting.
And it'll probably, just for realistic expectation, it'll probably be sometime after next Wednesday because we have our next construction meeting. I just want to see if they can
I'm perfectly
give me
fine with
everything.
that. Okay. Item 4, board business issues for consideration, the payment settlement plans.
The first one are 2 requests for a legal payment plan for owners at the attorney. And if you look on, well, I don't know where it is in yours, but let's see.
Pages 53, starting page 53.
Yeah, I'm looking differently because I
This is
can't
number
go
1.
back and forth. I'm looking in the actual PDF that Rachel built. Actually, I'm not going to look in there. One of them was for,
The first one's for $4,516.76. Does anybody have any questions? Motion to approve?
Second.
Got a motion by David and a second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, the second one is for $13,995.73. I think the important point here is we will be waiving a couple of $1,000 as is in the legal recommendation. But it's still a substantial amount of money in a situation that probably warrants closure. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Vanessa, any questions?
It's a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The third one is for $2,903.10. The recommendation here is not to accept this. The party is contesting attorney fees. My feeling on this one is I would agree with the recommendation because it would set a dangerous precedent for anything else that we do.
Totally agree.
Go ahead, Kevin. Or, let's have a motion first and a
Yeah,
second, and then we'll.
I'll make the
comment.
motion.
Motion to decline?
To decline, I'm sorry.
Second?
Second.
So my question is I see what you're, okay, I don't know how to talk about this without talking about it.
Go line items.
So,
Go from that top.
on
from
the
top.
item that we're on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth light item,
And
where it
it's in
says
white.
not responsible, it's in white with 1250, as well as the one right below it with 959. When we go back to the prior one that we did just approve, we can look at another white item, 2174.
And the two lines below,
1, 2,
right?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9. So are we being consistent here?
Can we let Christina address that?
The one before, we charged the attorney fees. This other one is saying they don't want it.
So basically, the one that you just previously approved, the amount you're saying is from a previous attorney's fees that we had paid. The ones that you're saying on the current one are ones from our current attorney that we have not paid. So those are fees the attorney is charging directly to the owner,
That
not to
helps
CROA.
clarify. So because of this, is this the last item that we have with the former attorney? So, and if not, can we put in maybe the actual firm in these so I can better understand the differences? Because I understand why we're going the direction we're going, and it's a good thing. But for consistency, we need to know, okay, that was the old way, this is the new way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Sorry, that was the only thing that confused me.
That's fine. Okay.
Makes sense.
Any other conversation on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Motion passes. Okay, the next item is item, a payment plan, I'm sorry. Management recommends the request. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Motion passes. Okay. Thank you. All right, so we go to item 5 on the agenda. So here, I think it's important with a new board that we discuss transparency. We discussed this a year ago, so let's talk about what it's going to mean for this board, or reconfirm that what it means, communication and accountability. Last year, I'll just start with transparency, and then everybody can throw in their comments. We're going to strive to have board members copied on all emails. Mary Ann is learning what that means. And what we said was we wanted to err towards over-communication, and board members were adults and they could figure out which items they wanted to really concentrate on and which ones nice to know. We had a clear rule that we don't need responses from every individual on every item. But like we had an example yesterday where I threw out a suggestion, we got feedback from another board member, you know, that's kind of how we have said we want to work, so that everybody knows what's going on. Sometimes we do the board only. Normally we copy at least Steve, and usually Steve and Susan. So does that still work as a goal, or does anyone have comments, changes, thoughts?
Well, as a new board member, I think it helps to make sure that we're all on the same page, so it helps us to catch up. So that's my perspective, and it's easy enough just to, I was attentive to my email this weekend, but I did not feel the need to respond to a lot of it, because it was just, the conversation that was going on was more informative. Those suggestions that were made were fine, and so I think it's up to us whether or not we feel like we need to respond. So I'm comfortable with what's been happening so far. Mary Ann?
I am as well. I mean, it's good to have the information, and like you know, I don't feel the need to make a big comment on everything that is just, I'm good with it.
Perfect.
It's a lot, but I'm good with it.
Well, but at least it keeps you in the know.
Yes, and that's important.
Every other board member comfortable with transparency as we've been doing it? Okay,
Continue
good.
it.
Second part was, well, really, communication has been part of the transparency. We're talking about transparency within the board, communication is also communication to the community. We certainly have went to a lot more workshops. We're going to talk later here about streamlining the board meeting. I personally really see workshops where we spend a little more time, navigate things. I'd like to get board meetings to where the upfront part is crisp. We spend more time on action items, and an action item may not be an item that has emotion. It can be an item where if we think something's important enough to discuss at the board meeting. And we've talked about communication with copying each other and stuff like that. Any other additions on communication?
I would just say that one of the things that I think is really good right now are these summaries of committees or summaries of CCDD or summary documents that I would think could be added to the board book so that it's available to the public to read the summaries of these meetings as they occur. I think that it's a good way for the liaison to do their job and to keep the rest of the board informed and then to answer questions as they come up. But I don't think we need in a board meeting to have show and tell. We've talked about that. And I think, I mean, I know Dory would like to stand up here for hours on end talking about all the committees, but I'm not sure that it's really a necessity if we've done it.
Changed in the law last July, if I'm correct?
That is correct, yes.
So but we can share opinions with one another and queries. I've chosen,
And I'll go to one voice as the fourth. I'll follow up with that in a minute. I'll follow up with I'm going to talk about one voice here at the end of this a little bit too.
so anyway, but I think timely communication as we see something or, again, the summary from the CDD meetings, which is my interpretation of their meeting, or Kevin's or Mary Ann's, but other interactions that we have, I think is helpful. The other thing, and I know we've done this with the board books in the past, where the board book comes out 5, 6, 7 days before a board meeting, and we'll probably come in with some guidelines for this board about when you want feedback. Again, I've chosen to share my feedback with the entire board, and I just hope that as we have feedback that we're all sharing, because we see things differently, and we can share that, and ideally the feedback becomes less and less because you're responding to what the board's interests are.
Okay.
Right.
So would a motion be to accept the standards of conduct that we used last year?
That's the next item.
Next
When
item.
we get
Yeah, because this is, I think this is all precursor to the next item.
precursor.
It is,
but
yes.
That would be what we're looking towards, something like that.
Yeah. Accountability. On accountability, and David added this, but what I'm really thinking here is that when we talk about, like the assignments that's going to come up here in a minute, a point person. You're the point person, you're accountable for that. I mean, rather than talk about it later, I'll talk about it now, Because you run into this, okay, does the president always have to be involved? Well, the short answer is absolutely not. At the end of the day, if you're the point person for something, run with it. Run with God, The president may join that committee because he wants to be on that one. The vice president may join it. Titles doesn't matter. If you're the point person, you're running with it. Certainly, I would hope by the time we're done with the accountabilities that we have a judicious spread of responsibilities and, if you're the point person, start running with something.
The other thing you've done is started that list of items for follow-through, which is accountability, and I really like that.
So what?
We don't have.
So that'll kind of lead to my fourth item, which is one voice. Steve has talked about one voice, and how I have started to think about one voice is, I've been the president now for at least a week and a half, 2 weeks, I don't know, something like that. But each weekend, I have written a email that's dealt with 8, 9, 10 topics, what I think is going on. It has attachments. One of them is accountabilities, which we'll talk about today. It has another one, stuff that we've requested from CCMC. I really want to get away from, I requested something and you forgot about it, to it's on the darn list. Where the hell is it? So we got, here's when it was requested, here's the items that have been completed. There's a third topic spreadsheet, which I can't remember right now.
Done.
Items done, but we also had a third topic.
Workshop.
Items to go on future workshops. And then I want to add a fourth sheet, which is priorities. What I would like the board to do is say, these are the top 10 priorities. And I'm thinking, item number 1 is do your day-to-day job. At the end of the day, that's management's core responsibility. But I think we as a group, and I think this conversation ought to happen in public and be reviewed in public, is, what are priorities 2 through 10? Certainly the athletic fields are there, but we could have something come up that pops up, bounces something off, something new. But, you know, at the end of the day, when management sits there and says, well, you guys are asking for 100 things, what's important, at least we have a core list of this is what's important. But then I think that'll, and I'll let Steve speak here in a minute, but if that goes regularly to Steve, it's Steve's responsibility to say this is what the board is thinking about is important. You need to distribute that amongst all your officers, and they need to know these are things that are important to the board.
Okay. Let's start really big picture here, and then we'll kind of focus in. I think as we get into April, we're talking about strategic focus, and we talked about setting up our 4 different areas to guide us in strategic focus. Part of that is strategic planning. So strategic planning guides myself and my team on what the highest priorities are. Then we have this worksheet now, which would be additional above and beyond the strategic focus of items that you've asked us to do. If the board's in agreement, I think it's a safe assumption that if it makes it to the worksheet, that there's consensus from the board that it needs to get done. It's not just one person saying do it. It's at least 4 heads nodded, yes, put that on the worksheet. So then if it becomes a problem where there's just not enough hours in the day to get it all done, we'll bring the conversation back to you and say, how do we reprioritize based on your strategic focus and now these new items that come up?
My hope is, just on that, my hope is that most of our to-do and our requests should be focused in on, this is part of our strategic plan.
Right.
That's so the top 10 should then feed into, well, these are our priorities. So hopefully the top 10 would be, you would already be in line with, yeah, we agree that's the direction we need to go.
It's very easy to lose focus when we have 7 different board members and we have multiple different requests coming from the community, and at the end of the day, it's the board's responsibility to set that focus and tell management what they want achieved and when they want it achieved. Anything added in there on that worksheet will then become a tool that I use with my team to say, okay, we got to change our prioritization. This one falls down a little bit, this one gets moved up, and here's the expectation of when these are supposed to get. Accountability is important. Accountability is how we get things done. If we manage off of noise and extra things coming all the time, we'll constantly be putting the focus stuff on the side to try and chase all the other stuff.
And that is why I started these lists, so that we wouldn't have noise. I mean, we see 1 million emails that deal with 1 million issues. And at the end of the day, the reason the whole board's being copied, and it will come out every single week, is any board member can say, you blew it, Ryan, you forgot about this. And you may be perfectly right, and we need to add it. And at the end of the day, you need to make sure that items that are important are on that list. You need to read it. If there's something from the past, we need to add it. The workshop one that David pointed out only had 1 or 2 items because I need to dig through some of the lists that you even have from the past and some other things in the last day or 2. So this is evolving. But at the end of the day, this becomes what we manage off of. And I think we can come to a workshop or a board meeting and have Steve say, I have follow-up questions on this or this.
And then the only other thing I'd like to add is that sometimes board meetings, we don't have them for another month. And I know we have plenty of workshops in between, but there may be times where something mission critical comes up and I need to speak with the board president. Contract allows for the board president to kind of fill in those gaps, and I'd like for us to get back to that. I think clear communication to the rest of the board on what was discussed is important, but to just say we're not going to do it, I think caused us some gaps last year, and I'd like to fill those back in.
One way that last year was going to be attempted to correct that was a weekly report from you as management to the board with those updates. And I think we got 1 or 2 of them, and then it just kind of disappeared. So I think it's definitely something that we could collectively work together and work towards. And if management is putting their best foot forward, and we put our best foot forward, we can have that one voice to one voice. And the one voice approach, I think I've mentioned it before to a couple of us here, is not just as the 7 of the board members to management. It's management as well with the rest of his team. And instead of the communications, and I think the way it previously worked was the manager gave the decisions. I love having them here and having their faces here, but is that the highest and best use of their time 3 times a month to sit here for 2 hours?
If the team, my leadership team, my department heads are emailing you, it's because I've asked them to email you on behalf of management. They're here because they're the subject matter experts in their area. It's their agenda items. They're not all my agenda items. They are knowledgeable about it. They're here to answer your questions, and I do feel like it's the highest and best use of their time to be here. I think from that standpoint, when it's us communicating to you, what you're getting from the department heads would have been communicated amongst us. So I would ask for that in return from you all, instead of having individual board members say, this is what I want, and I'm going to go directly to Tony, or I'm going to go directly to JR. I'd prefer it to be at least 4 of you want that and go through Ryan as the president. That's the way contract's established. President fills in the gaps.
That's what I'd like to get back
Okay.
towards, is one voice to one voice.
Okay,
And
so just to be
everybody
perfectly clear,
funds.
the reason I'm doing the weekly email, and it's just for the audience, you know, here's topic 1, here's topic 2, here's topic 3. If you approach me with something, it's going to be in that email. If I'm floating on a cruise ship somewhere, it's going to be Vanessa's issue to do the weekly update for that week. I mean, I think it's important to say, this is what the heck is going on. And I am perfectly fine, then you can do one voice to me, but then at a minimum, I'm going to put it in writing, so that if he comes to me with anything, you're going to see it. Steve talked with me about boom, boom, boom. And I think your worst-case scenario then is you've got a delay of 2 or 3 days. If I think it's important, you're going to get a much quicker email.
And you're not taking action at that point. It's more just a communication standpoint, and it's the accountability too. If there's something that you all feel needs to be addressed with me immediately, and it can't wait until the next board meeting, that one voice to Brian should be able to come into my office and say, here's something that we as a board, at least 4 of us, need you to address now.
That's, what Brian's doing now is very similar. When I was president, we had weekly meetings. I usually had a fellow board member attend, whether it be my vice president, treasurer, or just somebody else that happened to want to come in and attend the meeting. When we sat down for those weekly meetings, I would actually live just type out exactly what we talked about. I confirmed with Steve and with Susan that is this accurate, and as soon as it was done, I immediately sent it out to the entire board. That's very similar to what Brian is doing now with his highlights. So that's just another option if you wanted to streamline things a little bit more. That worked well for us. And I did copy, Brian does have copies of that too, so.
If you need better communication to us, then we will discuss that more and break it all out. Is that fair? But at a minimum, I'm going to keep trying to over-communicate the way I have been doing.
Perfect.
Okay, so on the issue of board commitment, transparency, communication, and accountability, everybody's on the same page? We got a good general understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Administrative resolution, board standard of conduct.
Same thing,
It's really, I think David said it right, or maybe Vaughn, it's an affirmation almost of what we just discussed, and it's pretty consistent with last year. Does anyone have any, I think we had this discussion last year. This is not a legally binding document. It is a good faith. You will be, we all sign it, as you could see last year. It is a good faith commitment of accountability, transparency, and responsibility to your fellow board members is what you're doing here.
Well, there is a breach of conduct clause in this, at the last, at the end.
Yeah, Article 3,
It is
Section
enforceable.
445.
Well, yeah, as regards illegal activity and stuff like that, but that's actually in the bylaws or charter and everything.
That's because we're board members.
You can go to jail,
Right.
you commit fraud and stuff like
Right.
that. So we incorporated it here, but the rest of it, I mean, we can't legally fire the president if he doesn't copy everybody. You know, you can.
We can try.
You can try.
Keep us on the same page.
Just dock his pay.
Okay.
I think that most of the content of this was the same as the prior year. I think we had maybe an hour discussion last year as items K and L, or maybe just L. So, but this is what we ended up with.
Right.
I think we're good.
Everybody comfortable with it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we'll have a motion, so let's actually make a motion. We'll have a motion that we want to adopt the same standard of conduct that we had in the prior years, and we'll have a consistent approach as to, big words here, transparency, communication, and accountability as laid out in the board standard of conduct.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's done. Okay, thank you. In your package here, we have, and did we have these for the audience or not?
There's plenty over here if you don't.
In the audience, if you didn't get one, we're going to go through board assignments, and they're over here if anybody didn't get one. And I'll wait a minute. All right, give me 1 minute. I'll be right back. Well, we're getting those out for the audience.
That's harsh. But true.
Events and dog park? I'll probably be jumping in at your events. I've been sitting in just to let you. I'm happy for you to take it. No, you take it. That's fine. I'm there. But it's a fun committee. It's a good group of people.
I just felt guilty because there's nothing.
Don't feel guilty. When you feel guilty, you get the dog park. No, that's just when you don't show up. My one missed meeting. David is full.
I was gonna say, David's a busy man.
Jeez Louise.
So is Jackson.
Yeah. We appreciate you guys. There's a lot of.
You got lots of highlights there.
But that's done, you fill in the rest.
Okay.
That's called initiation.
Here's what I want to do. All right, so here, this was started by Jackson last fall, late winter, whatever, and I think it's, and then we've polished it and moved it along. At the top, we have 3 decisions that have already been made: CJC, CCD County events, including Lexion liaison position, and CCS. Then we've got, and I'm not sure, for those are really more board type items. If you go down below that, I want to go item by item, and we could have up to 3 people on each one of those if we want. So an expression of interest is welcome. Then I want to have one person who is the point person. And the point person, we discussed it earlier, you know what I mean, I think. You're the person who's responsible for organizing and running with it.
External funding,
AP condo litigation. Jackson is on that. Do we need or have anybody else who wants to be involved with that, or is Jackson fine?
Jackson's fine unless he wants more people involved.
I think the board's going to be involved in our
Yeah.
discussions today. so-
Okay.
Good.
Mommy is the point person. ARC, we have no one right now in a board observation role.
I would be happy to do that.
Okay.
And I can be the point person if nobody
Okay.
else is in it.
Perfect. Artisan Park, we got Jackson, and I think you're the logical point person. Covenants, we have Anderson. Point person, good. Dog Park,
Silence is assent, I guess.
silence is assent. Mary Ann?
I'll do dog park, yeah.
Perfect.
Stop laughing. I don't know why you're laughing, so I'm afraid right now.
Don't be. Events,
Actually, it's a joke because he wasn't there, so he got thrown in on it.
Events committee, we have no one. Who wants to be the events committee person?
Can I just ask what the events
I'll be
committee,
there
how are we
as well.
defining that? What is that, just for clarification?
This is the actual special events committee that
Yeah, that's
Lori
special
chairs.
events committee.
The special events committee?
Yeah, that's special events. I'll put special in front
Can
of
we
it.
call that special events, because that gets
Yep,
confusing?
nope, I got it there. I'll add it.
Because that's
Special
what the
events.
resolution says.
Yep, special events.
I'm interested in that.
So that's Mary Ann again?
And then I'll probably be at these meetings
All right,
regardless,
so
so however you want to.
let's do Mary, two people, so we'll have Mary and Kevin. Which one of the 2 of you is going to be the point person?
You want to be the point?
Apparently me.
Brave volunteer. Good job, Mary Ann. Okay, recreation, we have Mummy. Anybody else want to be on that role?
He does such a good job at that.
Okay, Mummy's the point person. Technology is Kevin. Anybody else want to be on technology?
Come on. I'm not that.
I'm still trying to figure out how to turn on an iPad. Okay, athletic complex field implementation. Jack has agreed to remain on until it's completed, which...
Jack McLaughlin.
and Jack McLaughlin, sorry, yes. And Kevin is the logical point person, having done it last year, so, and its completion's in our future. Budget, finance, our treasurer is the point person, and for the sake of the audience, I might be the assistant treasurer and help her. Okay, Celebration 25. David wanted to stay on that. Anybody else want to be
No,
on
I was
Celebration?
not, no, just. For clarification, Vaughn was the designated person. When we did this list, I expressed interest, but I don't want to compete with Vaughn.
No, you're not competing. I think you should be the point person on that.
No, that. And I know this is board, but we had designated another person to be on that. So
Yeah, it
we-
should have two people, so do we have another person who wants to be on it?
Jump on with you if you'd like. I don't know if Jackson may want to do it just as an original. I'm open to it.
No, I've
Nobody
got
else would.
plenty on my plate.
I
So
see that.
so Vaughn, you are withdrawing from that?
You got the videos, yeah.
Okay, so we got two people. David, are you the point person
I'll be
then?
happy to be.
Okay.
And was it Vanessa or Kevin? That was the same.
Kevin said he was going to be the
Kevin's
second
going to be
one.
the second. Okay, Celebration Foundation, we don't have a point person.
I'll do that.
Do you want to do that?
Point for 25?
Who's doing it?
Who said that?
Vaughn?
Yeah.
You said
Vaughn.
Vaughn is.
Oh, Vaughn is the point person for foundation? Is that what we just said?
I think that's what I heard, yes.
Okay. We'll just nominate him to fill the slot.
Charter changes.
Tying back
Okay.
to the foundation really quick, just because of the Celebration 25, would it be appropriate for David and myself to jump in with Vaughn? For that?
Yeah, up to three people is fine.
Sure.
Is that,
So,
Let Vaughn, have Vaughn be the point person.
yes.
Vaughn can be the point person, and we got Kevin and David. Charter changes. We have Vanessa, Brave Volunteer, is the point. We have Jackson. If no one else wants to be the third person, I would like to be the third person.
Good.
And for the sake of clarity, when I say the third person is president, on this one, it means I'm third in order, and will really be, I'm going to read the charter, so that way I can answer the question if I run for reelection. Okay, communication. We had Anderson.
And again, I just was expressing interest.
I can
think we
jump
need a
in
further,
on, I can jump in on that one.
but we
too.
need a further description of what is intended by that. Because years ago, there was a committee. There was a committee.
And
Yeah.
one of the major objectives of that committee and that they focused on was looking at new
Website.
technology for communication, and that has kind of been absorbed by the technology committee. I don't know if we,
And then we have
there's a
website- and
need for a
website could be part
communication
of
committee, or if
But
that's already been
To
addressed.
me, we have website communication. I really don't want to write the monthly letter. I think you do it great. So
Used to. I've done,
I would be happy to let you continue to do that.
let me.
For the-
Yes, we would let you.
An opportunity.
You're the writer.
And maybe we think about how to define it and expand it a little more.
So to think about how, and could we morph website into communication?
Yeah, I guess to Steve's
I mean,
point, I'm a little confused on exactly communication. So for the purpose of the article, I think you did a killer job last year for the newspaper and keeping the residents informed. As secretary, I do a lot of the replies to the residents, and then technology, as Steve mentioned, website, cell service, things like that have really grown from that communication piece. So
Is there a need?
is there a need? Yeah.
I think the reason why it has never sustained is because people want to volunteer for something that they can see a real outcome from, and there just hasn't been anything that has come from a communication committee. I think that the biggest piece that the communication committee ever worked on is now being done by the technology committee.
So I would offer two things here. I think we should keep it and reflect upon the paragraph that is part of the management contract. Because what we inherited in the management contract was, under public relations, was really CYA. I mean, that goes back to the TCC days of when they wrote it. And so it was rewritten for this current management contract to be more proactive. So within that spirit, I would keep this as a piece, and then I would morph website into this. Not so much as technology, but as communicating with our residents.
As a channel.
It's one of the vehicles, cell service is another. There may be, Friday Flash. So
Well, yeah, it seems to me that Kevin, as the secretary and as the person that's been on point with the website along with you, would make the most sense to continue that focus.
Can I comment just on this chart overall? Because I'm just going to help clarify, not only for my own confusion, but for everybody, I think. The very top are committees, correct? With the exception of the condo litigation. So I understand it's mostly in alphabetical order with some things. But once we get onto the condo council, that's a committee. So we only have so many committees. The other items would be more task force items.
Some will, would
So
actually
some
go away with
things
time.
will go away over time, and I think communication is actually one of those things that, I hate to say communication has gone away, but that's essentially where I'm going with this. If we're gonna go ahead and revamp communication to say, hey, you're gonna respond to the forums, you're gonna work with management on the front porch item, things like that, sure, but it's gonna tie back into technology committee. So I guess, I don't wanna see us stretching ourselves very thin for things that I don't understand. You know what I mean? You take these things case
Some
by
of these I
case.
struggled with. I got rid of some things that I said made were just really duplicative, but I'm
I'm going to kind of jump in a little bit on the thought process. I don't perceive the responsibility of the technology committee responding to anything. I see them as trying to basically find out what the best tools are in order to communicate, but I don't see them actually implementing the communication. So from that end, I think David, doing the letter has been very valuable. I know as a community member, I would read that and use that as my resource. I think we also, to your point, though, as secretary, you respond whenever there is an issue when somebody reaches out specifically to the board. You typically respond to that, and obviously in conjunction with the rest of the team. So I think there's still a value in having the communication committee, but I think it's to respond to using the tools and technology.
Do we have a resolution making communication a committee, though?
There are
is.
resolutions from all the
It's
committees.
Not
Well,
active and current, and that's, so if we're going to assign for this and other items, I look at the very bottom website, that is, it's a thing, but it's been passed and grown into technology.
It should really be rolled
Kevin's
in.
Kevin's point, I think, makes perfect sense to have another column here that talks about whether it's a resolutions committee, resolution task force, or just a group that you put together.
Well, let's take the website as an example. The website is originally a technology, and then there's got to be, we all went to a website that has poor communication. You visit it once and you tell yourself you'll never go back again. So who's actually going to look at the website and make sure the communication actually stays fresh, and it's working and stuff like that? And should someone at the board be reviewing and think about that? Is that technology committee, or is it somebody thinking about communication?
And this will tie into a committee review item that we'll touch on later on, and the technology committee, and I'll touch on it later, met, and we said, hey, the best way to move forward is perhaps if we try this attempt of having a secretary, the secretary from this committee talks to the other committees and passes around that website as an example. Hey, recreation, what do you think of this? Hey, special events, what do you think? Hey, dog park, what do you think? So everybody's on the same page, which is what the purpose of the committees are, is to work together as one community. So I just don't want to see us, we can continue this, but I just.
Okay, so is the, do we strike communication or do we keep it? That's the question.
I think you keep it.
To me, it's important to keep, and
I think we
again, I
need
would
to
put
have a-
full website right into it.
It's just not a committee right now. It's
Not a
more of
committee.
a monthly
It's
newsletter
a
article.
responsibility. It's a
Okay, it's a
responsibility
responsibility.
more than a
It's a
committee.
task.
Okay.
If you're taking, David, you're taking this on?
Happy to.
Can you possibly provide a full briefing of what it will entail? So
And
just for,
maybe
that was
what
me,
maybe
because
what it won't
I'm,
entail.
yeah, because I'm a little
I'll do
confused
that.
on the purpose.
Okay, let's leave it at David for right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
happy to.
Condo council. Jackson had that before. Any reason to change or anything else? Works?
I can pop in with him if you want backup or not.
Doesn't hurt. Emergency hurricane.
So I would ask that the board president be part of this also, because there may be emergency expenditure authority that you have to enact. And we're going to need direct contact during storms.
I'll volunteer.
Are you on emergency hurricane you're talking about?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Probably on emergency hurricane, so Mommy, on condo council, Mommy is the point person. On emergency hurricane, who's?
I'll do it.
Are you on that?
Should that-
Are you saying
I
it
think
needs to
Brian
be
needs to be the
Brian?
point. If Vaughn wants to be in addition, that's fine, but I think that we need the board
And
president
I
as the
think
point.
you need VP, especially if Brian's out of town.
That's a good point.
You're
I
next
can-
in order.
I
I
can
think
be
this
a
is more of a
backup.
legal side than it
Take
is.
me out of that
Okay,
column.
we'll take you out. It'll be it'll be Kinsel and Vanessa.
So you take on
and-
communication, but you don't have to deal with hurricanes.
And Kinsel will be the
There's
point.
no communication up here.
Okay,
I'm not on it, right?
no, you're not on it, so we got two people. Okay, engineering study reserve balances. This is a project, just like the charter, but this is one we need to get launched, and we need someone on the board who's going to be the point person working with it. Who's it been in the past, or what's the logical?
Engineering study on,
This is the whole
It's been a
reserve.
management task in the past, and we've just run it. Well, we could certainly have a point of
Okay.
contact to communicate with. but-
Bond. Let's make
Treasurer,
Bond the
President.
person, as a treasurer, who coordinates, and then I will also X myself in there, but, so the engineering study will be Roberts, and then I'll also be on the team. External funding, seeking new sources. Mary Ann?
Where?
And for the purposes of the audience, looking at CCS, we think there's a lot of capacity from hearing Mary Ann talk about it, to look at grants and stuff like that we've never explored before that give us potential.
I'd like to work with Marion on that.
Yeah, I'd like to help on that.
Okay, so we can have,
Yeah.
so Mary Ann will be the point
Point.
person, and then we'll also have Anderson and Kirby. Perfect. Insurance. You want to keep it at Kinsel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Brian, I would be interested in being involved in that.
Absolutely.
Definitely not point, but
I'll be point,
But I can-
and you're on it.
I can bring some
No,
of my
that would be great.
experience to bear.
I would love it, actually. Island Village. Historically, this was Anderson and Kinsel.
Happy to stay involved.
Kirby?
I'd love to
Kevin,
be
you want to be on it
involved.
too?
I can pop in too, that way we have somebody for carrying over for next year, you and I can continue on for next year.
No, this
too.
is when it goes.
Can't have 4 people.
Well, I thought we had 3, would I be the third?
Wait,
You,
yeah, there's only 3.
Because David's already on there,
yeah,
and then Kevin, and then me, right?
okay.
Or is there somebody?
So Brian's coming off.
Oh,
Oh.
are we
Brian was on.
going to stay?
You were on it.
I don't have to go on, because he's continuing.
This is one of those things where the board president.
I think the
agree.
president has to be
No,
there
I'm
as
good with
well.
that, because David, you'll be able to continue on for next year anyway, so that's good.
Okay, so
So what did we
Are you
end
going to be
up?
So
the
it-
point? Who's the point?
Kinsel,
Brian's the point person?
Okay,
Good.
and then there'll be Anderson and Kevin.
and then Kevin, right?
So who are the 3 members?
David, myself, and Brian.
And we have a meeting
Brian's
this
the
afternoon,
point.
Kevin, if you can make it.
What time?
What time's our meeting this afternoon?
3:30.
3:30? It's a status type meeting.
Fine. I have another meeting too.
Parks and Facilities Master Plan, I've got David as the point person.
It was you, wasn't it,
It
Brian?
was you.
As the point person? I mean, we're almost close to.
Do you want to
kicking
finish
them.
it out?
I'm rolling it forward.
Okay.
I'm happy for you to be the point person, you have the
Doesn't it-
survey,
okay.
and I don't think it ends with the master plan. I think it goes right into next level of planning and stuff like
Fine.
that. So
Happy to.
I don't see this as a project, I see this as life.
Ongoing.
So that's really what we may redefine the title, but who else wants to be on it with
Well,
David?
Mary Ann left, so this is a good place.
That's how it goes. I've been there.
Does anybody else want to be on this with her?
I would be happy
Please.
to do
Yeah,
that.
that'd be
Okay, so we got Vanessa.
Oh, that's horrible.
When she comes in, we'll just let her know.
And she walked out the door, she said, don't assign me there.
Personnel, organizational structure, this is really a project that we've defined that we want to get done for us in review.
I'd like to be a part of that.
And I'm happy to be a part, but let someone else be lead.
I can go in too if you need me to.
Um,
I can lead it.
Is this discussing the organizational structure of my management team?
This is, was this really?
I think this is
I don't-
something that
I don't
we
think this belongs on
expected
here as an
today.
item. I think
I
this is
agree.
him going to report to the board, so let's get rid of it here.
Yeah.
It's not here.
Because I think the
It's going to be discussed with the whole board, is what's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Roofing litigation is really a project. We've got Mummy and Roberts. Who's the point person? Vaughn? Okay. School district, this is really coordination with on any issues. Who would that be?
Vanessa?
I'm fine with that if you want me to be point.
Vanessa would be perfect.
I'll be in there.
What do you?
You shouldn't have left.
Oh, no.
You got 3 new assignments.
Vanessa, I've been writing
Covered
more
3 items.
parking facilities, you went on that, right?
Yeah.
And insurance was Marion, external, okay, got it, sorry. Service areas, what the heck was service areas? I didn't put.
Well, I think that service areas actually overlaps a couple of things. It may involve some litigation. It may involve some degree of organization and development, like we're doing with the condos. My suggestion would be, since Vanessa's working on the condo council, if you'd be willing, if you and I could take on that role, I think there's a lot of overlap between the discussion with condos and with service areas right now.
I'm fine with that.
If Vaughn wanted to be involved as well for.
I can see some real value in, there's 2 meetings a year with the service areas. There's one when it's budget time, and then there's another one about the halfway point. So it'd probably be beneficial to have a board representative there to hear some of the comments and questions coming from the service area.
Okay, so we got Jackson and Vanessa, do we want a third? Whose point?
On the legal side, who needs to
Doesn't
sign
matter.
those documents for the service area?
The board.
The
legal
entire
side.
board? Because I think you've had me sign things for the service areas
The board approves,
last year.
and then the president will sign, or vice
President.
president, whoever's available.
Whoever's available.
Yeah, I don't know why they asked me to sign last year.
Well, maybe,
Point is Vanessa.
maybe David was out of town.
Okay, next item, surveys. Is that
Who's
really an item?
who's doing lead for the service
Or-
areas, I'm sorry?
You are.
Okay.
Pardon? Is surveys, is it really a line item, or is it more of a one-off type item? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know, that's a lot.
I didn't delete
Something that I did.
Roll it into communication.
I could put it in
Okay,
communication.
surveys rolls into communication.
Okay. It's something I did quarterly, and happy to pick back up once we get through the overall.
I think
Okay.
there's value.
Town center, isn't that rolled into up above in the coordination with CCD county events involving
It
Lexington?
already says Lexington on top there.
Yeah, so I think-
Well, and then we have the
Yeah, so I think it's
condos, the condos are already into
Condo
the
council.
condo
Yeah,
council.
so I think we had rolled it up above when we had original
Yeah,
conversation.
I don't understand, Jackson, you created this, I don't understand the purpose of that.
I was just trying to go through all the different
Yeah.
things that have come up on it.
So I'm going to strike that because we rolled it up above when we did that broader area.
I didn't have a specific.
The UCF study, we have Anderson and Mummy. I know, Jackson, we'll keep you as the point person because you've been working on it. And then we've got the website. Is the website really, should it be an item, or is it rolling technology,
Technology,
really?
yeah.
Okay, so we're going to strike that. The one item that we didn't have on here, when we talked with UCF last fall, we also had the lady from CCMC, and we talked about strategic planning, and we didn't put strategic planning on here as an item, and I don't think we should lose that, or asking the question. You remember we had talked about how we were going to maybe go to 2-year budgeting and some other stuff with it so that we have more of a rolling process?
Would that fall in, though, as something that's being discussed by the entire board?
It would be. We could roll it into budget finance, which is me and Vaughn, but if we're going to do that, at least I want to be explicit, that's where we're rolling it.
Yeah, I don't want to lose the momentum that we
Yeah.
had and the suggestions, because I think they're valuable, and I think they're going to tie into a variety of things, the charter changes, the use of
Okay,
stuff.
so then what we're going to do with the budget finance above is we're going to roll into it the strategic planning evolution. Is that fair?
Were you rolling that into budget finance?
Yep, and I'll make it happen.
Budget finance and strategic plan. right?
Good. Okay, so what I would like to do then is I will update this, I will distribute it to the board. You can correct all my typos and where I heard wrong. I'll ask everybody to come back and say, you agree, or this is where we need to fix an error. Once this is done, then I'll say in an email, go with God, and next time we have a board package or something like that, we will put it in there so that we have a final one for communication to the community. Is that fair?
Yep.
Thank you.
First 2
What about, sorry.
names we have in there. Top 2, CJC and CCD.
Well, okay, Vaughn's asking for the top, do we have a point person? For CJC, do we have a point person, or
Well,
Keep it who is.
we have 2 board seats? I mean, to me, those are just board seats, so we probably don't have a point person per se.
Not a point person, but.
Well, we had Anderson and Roberts, we had decided that at the prior
I
meeting.
just want to have that on the chart.
Yeah, no, it'll be on the chart, it'll stay on this chart.
Brian, isn't it you on CJC now?
Yeah.
No, I'm off. It's David and Vaughn.
That was approved at the
Yep.
board meeting.
On the CCD coordination, we have the county, I mean, I guess you could ask on the CCD county events, including Lexion line, should there be a point person, or are you as a group going to decide who's going to speak at a meeting and stuff like that?
Well, you know, David did a fabulous job with recapping it, so I would love to see you remain as the point person.
With CD?
CCD.
I'm asking, do we have a point person, or do we need one, or do you want to rotate it, or?
I don't know if we need one.
Based on.
I think it depends who's there.
Who's there, but.
Okay,
I mean,
I'm happy.
I think it just depends who's there.
I didn't put one because I didn't think one was needed. I was thinking the three of you would figure out how you're going to cover your
And it's
bases.
going to vary.
Yeah, it's going to vary who's in
Okay.
attendance, so the summary will be prepared by
Whomever is in attendance.
Well, yeah, but we need to know, because sometimes the board will make a request for that individual to make a certain request or presentation to CCDD, so we need to
It's just gonna
know
be
who to direct it to.
An email to the three.
Yeah.
The three of us.
You have told them the three. They know about the three.
They know about the
Yeah,
three.
and they sent you the example earlier
Yes.
yesterday was that, I mean, I didn't read all the stuff, but I saw the emails flying around, so they sent it to the three of you. I'm happy with the three of you coordinating.
And if we see there's an issue and we need a point,
Okay.
then we'll make
Then
it.
we'll change it up.
It's right here.
I
It's
agree with that.
David, Mary Ann, and Kevin.
Okay. We're good. And Lee Moore's our liaison
From the CCDD, yeah.
from
Correct.
CCD.
Okay.
To us.
All right, everybody's on the same page on this?
Yeah, good job.
Okay, so let's move forward. We have, I think it's clear that since it's 5 till 11, we got to end at 11:30 because we've got another meeting that we're not getting through this agenda, so we will have an April 1st meeting. What items do you want to hit on? We're going to roll over the agenda. Do you have any specific item you'd like to hit next, or you want to keep going in order? I'm willing to be flexible.
Is there anything specifically,
How about
Marianne? I know you
How about
can't-
CCS?
I know you can't.
Okay, let's do, I will do the CCS update right now. Okay. I talked to lawyer yesterday that was recommended. The previous lawyer had gave us the very high quote and has not returned any of my calls and was politely saying, please go away or pay us obscene money. The new lawyer, I raised all the questions to yesterday. I sent you an email, but I'll repeat it. Went through everything, thought they could do it for less than $1,000 unless we come back with a lot of questions. The feedback I got yesterday on the phone was that all the questions we were answering were going to be appropriate for a 501c4. There were no legal issues with the pass-throughs to Lexington or anything like that. The funds that are in there can be used for any public purpose. They could be used for July 4th. They could be used for anything else, but we need the legal document. So I sent across this morning the document telling them to start. From an accounting perspective, we have the one proposal letter, which you got a copy of late last week. We had another meeting yesterday. CROA Associates, so they can give us one. The other accountants have not come back with, they either said they can't do it or they don't have time. So I think we're going to end up having two accounting people come back and we can make a business decision. I've got a call into Experience Kissimmee. I'm going to meet with the Experience Kissimmee CEO, get any feedback they have and get a letter there. And then we'll have the three pieces of the puzzle. Question on timing of the audit. It is busy season for accounting firms, so I don't think we're going to have someone start an audit before the end of April, probably. I asked the firm that gave the proposal yesterday to come back with a time frame. To the best of my knowledge, they haven't responded. I haven't checked here. I asked this morning. So that's where CCS stands. Any comments or questions on CCS? We're moving it forward. And I've kind of made myself the point person there since I was involved last year and didn't do that.
Let's do the agreement.
Okay, agreement with Osceola County on the athletic fields. Vaughn, give us an update.
Steve and I went and met with the county manager's office and expressed our concern with the language that they had sent back to us and the agreement itself. There was a proposal in there to require the celebration of CROA to give free use of the fields to District 1, County District 1 people, and there was some other language in there that just really, to us, wasn't acceptable, so we we explained that to them, and what we've agreed on is having our lawyer, CROA's lawyer, get with the county attorney's office and have them explain to each other what their desires are, and then see where we come from that.
And the only thing I would add to that is that when we met with the county, and as we're expressing our concerns and the intention of what they're trying to accomplish with the wording, there seemed to be a general understanding we were all on the same page, that what we wanted to accomplish made sense across the board. Then the next step to that is getting it memorialized in a contract that will, as we all aren't in charge anymore, will continue to live on, and there's no doubt what it means. So the attorneys were meeting this morning to discuss what that language looks like. So hopefully when I get out of the meetings today, we'll have some idea of what that looks like.
We'll have Tom Slayton here for our next session, correct?
Yeah, and I think Charlie Eldridge was taking point on this phone call this morning, so I don't know if they've had a chance to touch base or not, but I'll follow up today to find out what that conversation looked like.
One thing I think is worth pointing out is that it sounds like we're optimistic that we're going to eventually end up with the money. But I think it's also important to recognize that there's a cash flow question here. We are going to have to make all the payments on the ball fields. We're going to have to take care of the obligations that we've set up. And our hope was that we would have had the money in our bank account by now. There may be a gap of some period of time, I don't know how long, in which we don't have that money but anticipate it. And that during that time, we're certainly in no danger, I assume, of being able to pay our bills, but at the same time, we also will not have as much in our working capital fund as we might have anticipated. I mean, this was draining it down quite a ways. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, let me, for the audience, let me summarize. I'll take your lead on this. From an operating perspective, we have over $1 million in operating funds. So when we talk about the operations of CROA, we got plenty of money. No issue there at all. When we talk about a contingency fund, we're just slightly under $500,000, and we said our goal was to have $500,000 in the contingency fund. So we're in great shape there if we needed to pay an insurance deductible or if something happened, no issue there. From a working capital fund perspective, and David will go next to the Parks and Facilities Plan, we had talked about how fast did we want to spend money and where do we want to spend it. Well, right now, without the county money, that's a really simple answer. We have about $2.9 million, and we're probably going to spend 2.7 of it. We're going to be left with $100,000. Where we spend that extra $100,000 is easy, probably nowhere. We would have, so the county money decision is very important because it really just boils down to, can we do something tomorrow, or do we communicate to the whole community that we've started down a planning process of rebuilding the fund into the future and nothing's going to happen for a while. That's really what we're talking about here. We have, as Jackson correctly stated, we have no choice but to pay for the ball fields. We have cash to pay for the ball fields. We want to do them right and all that type of stuff. So that is, financially, that is not an issue. Being able to do something tomorrow as regards working capital projects would be an issue, and it's just the reality of where we're at. And what the county proposed would make no sense if you listen to the prior conversation for all those reasons. So,
and there's a guaranteed funding source of anywhere between $750,000 to $900,000 a year coming in from home resales and apartment rent fees.
yeah, it's about 700, it's not 900, it's 750,000 in the budget because we use some of those funds for other things. For the board, we've got the fees that we're going to owe to CCDD for the road going out there. We owe a couple $100,000 in 2020 for that. So
yeah, just when I say up to, it's as we move into next year and the year after that.
Yeah,
it won't be
so there is a flow of funding
right.
into the future. It would just.
For the purpose of that road, are we saying that that money would eventually come out of working capital?
That's where it's been.
That's where it's coming from. We actually, Vaughn and I met with Cole and Company yesterday, and Susan and Steve were there, and we talked about the accounting issues. And the answer from Mr. Cole was that as regards that road, as regards the athletic complex, under association accounting, you don't actually set up an asset. What you do is you pay the funds out of working capital, and it's, Kevin's looking weird, and that's how I look too. But he said under GAAP for that, you don't set up assets. Even this building, which has been set up as an asset, shouldn't be set up as an asset. Really, when you expend working capital funds, and then you go into replacement reserves, and because you're an association, what you really have is you have the association that owns these properties, and you get into the situation of you pay for replacement reserves and make sure you have adequate replacement reserves and stuff like that. You have a footnote that says you own these various things, but you don't. It's different than a normal real estate company, as an example, that owns a bunch of assets. So you really don't have an asset, is
So
what
the
he
road is
said.
not an asset? Under accounting.
Or the athletic fields, or even this building, he's saying it's not an asset. Because you're a homeowners association, you just own those items, you have replacement reserves for them and stuff like that. And it's really almost more like a cash flow type accounting, is the way he said association accounting works. And you also, he told us, do not set up a liability for the funds that you're going to owe down the road. You just know that out of your working capital funds, you're going to owe those monies.
Is that because he looks at it as a useful life item?
It's because he was stating that as an HOA, in order for that to be declared as an asset, that you have to be able, the
Have
board
receipts.
itself has to have the ability, the authority to sell that property. We can't do that as a board, just us. And he says, if you can't do that as a board, as he says, as other HOAs, he does other HOAs as well. He says, as a board, if you don't have that authority to sell that, it's not an asset on your sheet.
It was totally weird to me, but that was the logic. If the seven of us can't say we want to sell this building and implement that decision without any other approval, which Steve pointed out, even, TCC's got to be involved, certainly the community has to be involved and all that type of stuff, it changes the rules as regards
What's in appendixes?
how you do it, and for a GAAP audit.
Oh, you accountants.
There's another piece to that too, though, is that you're budgeting, I think, close to $700,000 this year for replacement reserves, and all your assets are identified through your reserve study. Your assets that are due for ongoing replacement. And so instead of budgeting for depreciation and in reserves, that would be considered double dipping. So we said you only budget for those replacement reserves. And that's where your assets allocated.
Really, and then you have footnote disclosure about the assets that you own, so that a reader of your financial statements can see in the footnotes that you have both this item that the association owns, and you have liabilities related to that will come due in the future. So it's a weird form of accounting that I guess makes sense. So, but he's a GAAP expert. I mean, so on association accounting, I explained reinsurance accounting to him, and he glossed over too. So, and but I'm educating because we've had some emails, and that was a meeting we had at the end of the day yesterday. It was interesting. So, anyway, back to the county. Any additional comments, questions?
Any idea of timing?
I'm hoping that the conversation went well this morning and we can get some language correction and they can get it on their next agenda. You'll probably have to approve the updated wording also, because you approved their original agreement that they sent us.
Right.
He told me he wasn't here for anything.
Okay.
I can do a very quick update on the UCF study.
Let's first.
It was one of the items.
Well, farmers market expansion, JR, we got that, and I want to talk about the parks and facilities plan and the survey. I don't know if you had like farmers market expansion you were ready to talk about today?
Just, we talked about last week.
Okay, well, we're going to call you up because we had a group, we had never discussed it. But let's do the parks and facilities plan, David, and what's happening there, and then we'll go to the farmers market.
So what I know about the survey is we all saw the draft mock-up online, and I found, 17 corrections, I think it was. Brian had a correction, so those were, we asked for any feedback, anything at the high level by noon on Monday, and Steve, you forwarded it to Lowe's Design?
Yep, it's with Lowe's. I sent it on Monday to them, or Tuesday to them, and we had a quick conversation about the feedback and primarily the feedback was from Brian and David.
Right.
So I sent your worksheet to them and talked a little bit about some of those changes. So Today, I'll follow up with them and touch base on where they are with those corrections. And then I think we need to go ahead and start moving forward. I think we're at the point now where we're ready to go ahead and start moving forward with it, to get it out and set a date and start getting it out to the residents so we can communicate to them.
So what I asked for is, there were some technological problems, that's why we do it online. There were things that did not work. Like if you made a choice of 1 to 5 and then you made a comment, you negated your choice of 1 to 5. That's not working right. So we need one last review, whether I do that or management does that. If all those items on my check sheet are done, and then Brian's comment about the dollar amount of capital improvements, such like you were just talking about, is management can do that and go live. What's the anticipated timeline for that?
As soon as we get everything looks okay from the board, I'm going to start having that conversation with them about getting it out. I think we need about a week time frame to really promote it and get the word out to folks, and then start after that.
So is the process a postcard going in the mail to the select sample?
Right, for the statistically valid sample, there will be. And then we'll promote through Friday Flash also. Probably sell a service to remind folks. Anywhere we can put it on the website, anywhere we can get the word out that a week after the statistically valid survey, it'll be open to everybody.
So we were going to do a two-part process, one to the select sample and one to the entire community.
Right.
Those were going to be separated by about a week.
A week time frame, yes.
So we don't know a timeline yet.
It's all dependent on the board saying we're ready to get the survey out. So once we're ready to get the survey out, then
we had
that's it.
Implicit approval last week based on the feedback.
Yeah, okay. So as long as they fix those additional.
And we need to
times.
verify that they're fixed.
Okay.
So, yeah, we need to make sure the survey works. I mean, I think
how about, why don't we, when I get it back, I'll get it to David.
I'm happy to do it.
And then the two of us will make sure it works. And then if it's okay, then we don't need full approval again. We'll just move forward.
all the other changes were basically wording changes.
Right.
So really, I think we're down to
the fine tuning.
We're down
Which
to,
you always
we
have-
email it out, it doesn't work, we get slaughtered.
Right, sure.
Technology matters.
So once they say they're ready to go, the postcards are ready to go in the mail?
I think they're prepared. I'm ready to get this up and running. It's just a matter of tweaking it to where we're happy with it.
For the general community, it would be live for what, 3 weeks?
Well, I believe that's what we originally talked about, was a 3-week time frame. We were trying to get it done in April. We can certainly look at expanding a little bit longer if we're not on a time crunch.
April should work. I mean, April 1st is Monday.
No, not for a completion of April.
No.
Right.
But
For the survey, yes, we should be able to, as long as everything looks okay, we should, well, I'd like a week to promote, so the following week.
We should take the time to promote it properly. There's no chance that we're going to have the county money sitting in the bank account next Thursday.
Right.
So, you know, if everything goes right, and we're lucky, we'll have the county money in June. Very few things have went right so far with that process. So let's, get it out, give it a month, assemble it, because then once you get all the feedback, you still got to go through and do your work and all that type of stuff. Or they'll do most of the work, but we're going to want to review it before we do a board.
That's what they're doing.
I think.
It'll take, so again, what I'd asked for was a proposed timeline. So when does it go to the select sample? When does it get released to the community? When are results due? And then what is their timeline for a report?
Let's finalize it, to make sure that it looks the way we want it. Then I'll put together the timeline for promotion and then getting it out to the community.
Maybe it can all be done by the end of April. All resident feedback by the end of April would be reasonable. I mean, it should be. Those were simple fixes.
And the questions are simple. I mean, anybody taking the survey can do it in 8 minutes. Okay, so that one's in your court. Come on up, JR. Farmers market expansion.
Yes.
Can you call up that sheet, Steve? Do you have the one that you had, for everybody, an email had come out to the board saying, talking about farmers?
I sent an email to Brian because I did notice, and a resident brought up to me on the CDD agenda, was a request to expand the farmers market. Brian requested directly from the CCDD manager to pull that, based on the discussion not having been taking place with the CROA board. And I'll only speak for myself, but I was a bit embarrassed at the CCDD meeting when that board expressed their frustration with CROA pulling it, and CROA, at least me, had some frustration that it wasn't discussed. So here's my face on this agenda item at this meeting. I was pretty clueless, so I don't know how you guys felt, but it was something that I think we need to discuss it if we're going to be sent to CCDD to represent. That's me.
Can I just go back? What is CCDD's involvement on the farmer's market?
They are the Esplanade.
Where do you go?
So the Esplanade, the walkway right by the lake, that belongs to the CCDD.
The walkway?
Yes.
But not the street?
Correct. So management put a request in to use that space.
The sidewalk?
I wasn't aware of
The
it.
sidewalk, why can't they just use the street?
Well, we're gonna talk about it now. We haven't had that discussion.
So first things first, we had a conversation, and Steve and I had a conversation. If something's going to go to CCD, it needs to be discussed with the board, if it's going to have CROA's name on it. And oversight, but that's the rule going forward, so it just happens. Because we've talked about transparency today, and I agree if I was at the meeting. If you're at the meeting and you get asked a question about something that you're unaware of, that's not good.
It's unhelpful.
For any of us. It's unhelpful, and it makes us all look bad. I made the call to pull it. Yeah, they can give me grief for pulling it. Such is life. I don't care. CROA president can do that. And in this case, I think it was justified. So now what I'd like to do, if you bounce down to the second page of that, maybe, and I don't know, JR, what your involvement was versus other people's involvement, but let's just talk about what's happening here, so at least the board's all on the same page as to what's going on with the farmers market expansion. At the bottom of this, there was a map. Maybe you can flip it a little. Or
Is this in this package?
We've never seen this.
I don't think we've seen
this was in the. You haven't seen this?
No.
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 Vaughn, have you seen it?
Okay.
That's why I was asking. I didn't see why we needed to involve CCDD in this at all. Why we just didn't do it on the street.
Well, no, that's
That's going to be another issue, but
Well,
let's.
I can give you a little
get
bit
the
more
full
background for this. So
understanding.
the farmer's market was at Lakeside Park. It was on a CROA property. I can tell you in the 5 years that I've been here, we haven't come back and forth, management has not come back and forth to the board about any logistics when it comes to the farmer's market. I completely understand why the board wants to be involved with it being downtown and the requests going in front of the CDD. So I offer an apology for that. You should have been briefed before we brought it in front of the CDD. We were looking to try and expand the farmer's market to where maybe some music, some additional booths. They have more people. It's become so popular that the vendor has more people that want to be a part of this. So we do have two options. We can do it on the CDD-owned area here, or we could do it on Front Street, which would require us closing that street down on Sundays as well. So those are our two options here.
No one approached me officially. What I had heard through the grapevine, which is always very reliable, was that, you know, the vendor who runs the farmer's market was blown away at how successful the farmer's market has been, which is where they had people who were in Winter Garden and other places say, wait a minute, we want to be part of this too. Mm-hmm. So that is what's leading to the conversation.
And this was, from an expansion purpose, this was the map that JR put together to put into the CDD application. Because you have to go in front of the CDD board if you want to use the promenade, espionage, whatever you want to call it. This outlined area here belongs to the development district, and they have to approve it. And they have certain stipulations to be able to use their property.
So maybe, we'll get to board conversation in a minute, but maybe now you can talk a little bit, because have we thought about traffic concerns? Have we thought about safety concerns? Has Jerry or whoever else needs to be involved, how, the big picture of this and what it involves, what's been thought about? And who's doing what?
Well, like we had discussed last week, my intent was to actually put this in for April, and was asked to put it in for the March meeting, because the farmers market sent me the map there when they had discussed, and someone, I guess they met downtown, said, well, your next step would be to go over to the Esplanade. So that's why they sent that map in there. One of their purposes is to, what they do in Winter Garden, they have acoustic music during the farmers market. But I was still waiting for more details on their safety plan, because if Front Street is going to remain open right now you're going to have pedestrian traffic between Market Street and the Esplanade, and cars are still going to be traveling there.
You mentioned the farmer's market. That vendor talked to somebody downtown.
I don't know
They
who
suggested the next step.
I don't know who they talked to. There was I don't believe it was Lexington, if that's what you're getting at.
I just want to know who it is for.
I guess they had mentioned to somebody about expanding, that they needed, they're probably going to need more
I
space.
think they're
and that was-
telling whoever will listen that it's growing in popularity and they'd like to expand it.
Yeah, but
The bottom line is.
I'm not understanding, oh, this person said this.
I
to
think
do that.
it matters who they,
the
I
full
think
thing.
what the real question is do we even want it to expand? Or do we want to say, no, this is as big as it's going to get in Celebration? But, and I completely understand why the CROA Board's having this conversation, because it is your program. The authority to approve whether it expands or not is CROA or the CDD.
My thought is, regardless what, JR said, and I agree that regardless of whether you put it on Front Street or you put it on CCDD property, you're gonna have to close Front Street either way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, my thought is, I'd rather keep it just CROA and not involve CCDD if we can, if we're gonna close Front anyway, or we don't expand at all. That would be my two.
I guess, what are the advantages of expanding? I guess we'll start there. I guess I don't understand. First of all, I like the way that the farmer's market is right now. It's very good, huge improvement, so kudos on that. But I don't understand what the rationale would be in expanding it.
Number one would be from a revenue standpoint.
Okay.
Obviously, more vendors is a larger percentage that comes back to CROA. Expanding, I mean, it's an opportunity to bring different vendors in that normally wouldn't have the opportunity now, because they are maxed out in their space. They actually, I think they filled up
It's
quicker than
very tight.
they had thought. So they're looking to expand it. Like I said, they're looking to add the music. They're looking to do a little bit different, a few different things. They expect this to die down a little bit now with the summer, but they're trying to get an idea, because by the time the fall rolls around, they think that they could realistically be somewhere around 130 vendors if we want to.
What about traffic, safety, all that type of stuff?
I mean, right now, we do close the roads up the top of the square and on the bottom of Market Street, and then from there, it depends on where you want to expand to.
So if you did this, you're gonna close the road at further road, or, I mean, you're not gonna have
Sycamore and,
I mean, if you move to Front Street, you would close like we do for any other event downtown, from the Tavern to
I mean,
Columbia.
I don't know exactly what this is, but this looks like booths to me that are even in the street.
No, that's
a concert.
That's a Google map. That's actually a CROA event from about 4 years ago.
Okay, so you're gonna have stuff there, but you wouldn't have people driving through the middle of the market. I mean, that's the questions I'm asking is, if you were gonna do it, then I'm assuming you have to shut it down at Starbucks, and you have to shut it down somewhere down like Columbia. So I'm asking.
Tavern to Columbia is what you
Well,
said.
right now, that's why I was still waiting to talk to the farmers market and discussing what exactly they wanted to do over there. Because like I mentioned, I don't feel comfortable with Front Street open. And I think if we are going to allow an expansion, then I think that the expansion should be on Front Street and not necessarily over on the Esplanade.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of concerns that I want to bring up. First, thank you for having this conversation. It's definitely something that there's a lot of what-ifs and unknowns right now, so I think we've all learned it was premature to go ahead and put in front of the CCDD board. With that being said, because the event is successful, this event is supposed to be for the residents, by the residents, so on. I'd like it to keep it that way. Competition is healthy. I'm not in favor of going up to 130 booths or whatever I just heard. This will encourage that vendor, the farmer's market vendor, to put their best people forward, their best booths in this community. We do have, I think, the same produce vendor is in 2 locations within the area. The area around the water fountain, that area is already shut down, which is good for traffic and safety right there. But if you're talking about adding a musician or entertainment or a band or something small that's family friendly, maybe that would be the location to do it already in the area that we have the control on. I will not be in favor of shutting down Front Street, putting anything for profit on the CCDD property. I like it how it is, and I want to commend you for that. It's great, it really is. I don't think making it larger is the best decision.
JR, is the expansion, I mean, I went to the one last Sunday, and it just seems it's almost getting to turn into somewhat of an arts and crafts festival. I mean, there's a lot of those. Are Are we trying to keep it a farmer's market, or is it going to be like an arts and crafts food market?
It's starting to mirror what they have at Lake Eola and Winter Garden. I mean, they do want some, we are limited a little bit as far as type of food vendors that can come in, or bakery, that kind of thing, because of the existing establishments downtown.
Yeah, restaurants.
But they are, trying to get around them, and when they have applications that are questionable, they'll come into me, and I'll actually review them with Lexington to make sure that they're not in direct competition with anybody. But they're trying to mirror the two that they have now.
Matt?
Wait, competition? I understand the reason why, but.
Well, they don't want to have somebody come in and sell baked goods when you have Sweet Escapes right there.
Yeah, no, and I understand, but I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, I think the reports that we're getting back up to this point are that the businesses are getting more foot traffic.
They are getting more
than they
foot
have in the
traffic,
past.
even with, Cookies and Crumbles is one bakery item that's on Market Street. It's 6 hours a week.
The commercial leases have non-compete clauses. We can't
Not,
override those.
not with us, and Lexington doesn't
Not
own
with
Market
us,
Street.
but they have a general non-compete clause that says that the landlord will not put a competitive business there. I'm not sure you want to engage in litigation with individual restaurants and store owners.
The landlord doesn't own Market Street.
I understand, but the agreement itself is written in a way that it protects that store owner against a pop-up store that is a
It's not.
competitive store.
It's not, I'd like to see that if that exists, but that doesn't exist, that I know of.
I think it's one day a week, so that piece itself, maybe not so impactful, but I'm a resident who goes to that farmer's market almost every week, and I would advocate for closing down Front Street, because it is far too tight an environment right now. It's not comfortable. It also is not as safe, because what you can observe is where Front Street is open, people are freely crossing back and forth without a thought to traffic because of the crowded environment. And I think that for purpose of use and making the use comfortable, I would advocate for closing Front Street.
Just for clarification, two different things. Closing Front Street is one thing for safety and control and traffic. Closing Front Street to expand the market onto the property, to make the market larger, is
I would
not
also
done.
advocate for more vendors.
Really?
Yes, because if it's the same people all the time with the same stuff, as a resident who enjoys frequenting that, and I think many residents do, I mean, think about the volume of residents, right? 130 vendors for the volume of residents that we have available to attend the farmer's market. That's nothing. If we have 10,000 residents, 130 vendors in the farmer's market is not overwhelming. An idea, once it starts being placed, then those kinds of decisions, I think, would have to be made. But I would advocate for that expansion.
Yes. Just to comment, I'm happy to, for the safety.
Name and address, please.
Debbie Jackson, 413 Sycamore Street. I just have a question for you, because years ago, it was on Front Street. So what was the reason that it came off Front Street? And we did have a lot more vendors. And if you go around like I do, and I ask the vendors on Sunday, like, how are you doing? They're sold out.
Yeah.
By 11 o'clock,
Yeah.
they're sold out, the most popular ones. They would love to see, and they too would love to see other vendors in there. So that's just my little comment.
Success breeds
But I
success.
do have a question. What happened?
From what I understand, I wasn't here during the time frame, but what I understand was there was a lot of competitive type vendors that were taking place down there, and it was a turnoff to the businesses, and trying to work together, the decision was made to move it to
Lexington requested that CROA move it to another location. That's what it was.
Okay, because I do know that the restaurants too, they
They
have
love it.
benefited from this
I
tremendously.
think that they've.
And we do have to look at
I
that.
think they've
Flipping
flipped their
their
mindset
attitude.
now, though, to say this is making more sense to have it here, because we are
It is
getting
creating
higher foot
traffic.
traffic.
Go ahead, Jim.
Can I, JR, on Front Street, as it is right now Sunday, I don't recall Sunday, but do we still allow parking on Front Street?
During the market?
During the market? Okay, so that would even increase, yeah. So that even tightens that area up even more for pedestrian traffic, I guess. With the cars all parked along there.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi.
Hey, Lauren.
Laurel Rousseau, 709 Bloom Street. I wanted to weigh in and say I love the market down there. I do feel the no compete thing is an issue and makes it less desirable when it's more arts and crafts. So I would sort of, and I don't know that like Sweet Escape is a bakery that's comparable to some of the other bakeries that come in. So I'd love to see some increase on actual viable food vendors, et cetera. I'm not actually opposed to expanding on Front Street. I do think safety-wise already, Front Street should be closed. So an expansion, if it's not just more arts and crafts, would be just my personal preference. I'm vehemently opposed to it expanding onto the Esplanade because I think we're opening up into a for-profit, not-for-profit conversation. And I think it becomes very subjective, people coming up for applications to say, hey, this benefits the community, now you need to consider me, but you know, you're saying no, but you considered the farmer's market. I just think that muddies the water. I think that's already an issue. Two final comments, and I did bring it up to Sonoa, but I'm confused, and I know that somewhat it's being addressed. Since now snowing, all of those barricades, everything's staying out on the sidewalks all the time. It's an eyesore. Some of the conversation is because the markets come back downtown, that's precipitating some of this storage on the sidewalks. Signs are staying out all the time. Very confused by what's going on and whose responsibility it is to remove that, but it's dangerous. Those barricades up at the top in particular, they have a metal bar that come out when you're walking the sidewalk up on that Market Square closure. So again, I don't want to see, I love the new things coming in. I don't want to see it junking up the streets because, boy, it's happening so often, we don't want to bother lugging it away.
Okay.
So that would definitely be one thing, and I forgot my other thought, but
We were working with Lexington as of yesterday to identify where they're going to be stored. JR met with them yesterday afternoon.
okay, so that'll be pretty straightforward and start to happen, because that's,
They need to be moved.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you.
I
Thank you.
agree with those points.
I do.
As far as Front Street and staying off CCDD property.
Well, I hadn't actually thought about it until Laurel said it, but now snowing versus the farmer's market being in the same place actually presents an interesting dilemma too. Can we, as a solution, ask a couple of board members to work with JR to think about farmer's market? It's been an interesting conversation.
So you keep this between special events and the events including Lexington that you have on this beautiful
That
chart
makes a
here?
lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the special events committee, we kind of hash this out.
Yeah.
But if the direction, if we got four heads nodding in the direction of try and utilize Front Street instead of the CDD property, then I think that gives us some direction on where to go with it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
And
think
then it
that's-
doesn't need any type of permitting approval, it just needs
I
to go
just-
through Canoa.
Can I just make a point of clarification as to my concern? Can we keep it, though, on our Front Street, but do we still need to get permitting because of the increased traffic? Because if we keep it right on our Front Street area, does that overlap at all into CDD property?
No.
It doesn't?
No,
Okay.
Front
I
Street
would
is
say,
Canoa.
I actually agree with Laurel. I'd like to not have it on the Esplanade. That would be my choice.
Yeah.
I would like to have, versus 4 heads nodding, I'd like to have at least 6 heads nodding. I would like to have a small group, I don't care who it is, come back and say, here's a couple options that actually make sense, because I really don't want this to be launched without it showing up on the front porch I want it to come forward, we're doing this because it's a success, this is a way that we have factored in safety, this is a way I agree with you, we don't want it to become 200, 300, 400. It's a nice community thing, 10,000 people ought to be able to support it, let's get it to where it makes sense for our community. So who is the right group to work with JR to come up with a recommendation? It can either be a couple of board members, volunteer, or it could be the events group or the recreation. I mean, who should it be? That's what I'm asking.
It's going to be on front porch.
I think it's probably better geared towards the events committee. They're used to putting on events.
So the special events committee brave volunteers were, was it Mary Ann and Kevin?
Yeah.
But if we got a recommendation from the events committee
that's
where they
perfect.
voted on it,
Well, no, actually, special events was, Mary Ann,
Mary Ann
Kevin,
and Kevin.
and Von Roberts. All right, so I like that. The special events committee or liaisons, you 3 people, work with JR and anybody else here, come back and say, this is something that meets the needs of the community. we're going to then communicate it properly. We can make a decision when we go to the community and say, this is what we're doing, it's been popular, this is good, it's something that works. You people out there know those 3 people. If you got opinions, please give it to them. I think that's fair.
Brian, can I just ask, though, the Special Events Committee is a committee that you guys delegate assignments to, then they vote on recommendations back to the board. The liaisons are there to listen, offer feedback, but they don't vote on the committee level. If we're going to give it to the Special Events Committee, I think it should be the Events Committee talking about this, discussing it, giving you all a recommendation based on the guidance from their liaisons, and then hopefully, once it comes back, the liaisons are in agreement with what the committee has asked for.
So Steve,
I think that's the cleanest way.
I want to touch on that when we go into other discussions with committees down the road, because similar to what I said before, municipality versus HOA, this conversation comes up a lot of, hey, this is your committee, this is their recommendation, you should take it, and this is your committee, this is not what management would do, you're the board, you make the final decision. So we need to get a better definition of
I think that we would love to always have decisions come to you where the committee management are on the same page of that, and we're making those recommendations. I can't promise you that, though. There's probably going to be times where there may be a disagreement, and then it's going to leave a tough choice on the board.
Okay. For
We'll get it figured out.
the sake of the farmer's market, Vaughn wasn't on it, by the way. I've got to work off the finesses just to correct a couple areas. But for the sake of this one, we got Marianne and Kevin, who are the liaisons. They have a more elevated role. They can work with the committee. We don't need the committee coming to the board. We need you as a group to have a conversation and come back and say this is intelligent. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
And so I don't, whatever you said, great, but in this one, we've got an assignment.
Oh, you want the board members to work with JR, not the Special Events Committee?
Well, no, and the special events. So I'm saying special events, these are 2 liaisons, but you said normally it would be them coming to the board. I'm saying it's those 2 working with them, and they come back as a joint recommendation.
Right, I'm just thinking naturally, if they're liaisons, they're going to be part of that conversation, but they can't vote at the committee level. They can only vote at the board level.
No, we know.
No, but we can.
conversation be there.
We're asking the special events members to work with these 2. You don't have to have a vote special events.
Steve,
I'm telling you, we're doing this.
Steve, think of it this way. Think of it this way. When you sit here and have meetings, you're not a voting member, but you're very persuasive. Same concept.
I do not doubt that.
Same concept.
All right, we are at 11:33.
No, I do have one more thing real quickly, though. So you have July 4th activities. I don't think you have enough time to go.
We're going to
through
go
the
to
whole
April
thing.
1st.
But, okay, so we need to get the firework contract signed, and I need direction from the board. Lexington would prefer that, since we're running the whole thing, to have us sign the contract and then just give us the money. If you are in agreement with that, I can put together an MOU with them, that here's what we're gonna do, here's how it's gonna, how you're gonna transfer the money. We'll just go back.
We've already approved it.
You've approved it, but Lexington is paying for it, so we want to make sure, if we're running it, that would be us completely running the whole thing and just getting the donation from
So
them.
when you have a check in your hands, then we can sign the contract.
Well,
Same time.
I think they're going to require a contract for a check, so I can do an MOU that's signed by both parties, and then it will be
Do
upheld.
what you think makes sense.
Legally binding MOU.
Yeah, whatever makes sense between you and Brian is fine.
Mike from Lexington
You're gonna have
said
to
that
sign it anyway, so.
they would pay directly to the company for the fireworks. Why is it coming through CROA?
Well,
What's the advantage?
they're asking us, because we're running the entire event, to go ahead and run it all the way through.
But does
get
that
the
incur
permit,
any
pay-
Is that a liability
on
thing?
CROA
We've
for
already-
actually doing the contract, or should we just leave it with Lex?
We've already committed to it.
We already had this conversation though last month.
We
What's
already committed
changed?
to running.
Yeah.
We're running.
Just the signing of the contract. Brian's going to have to sign it as the board president here.
Is the liability for the fireworks come to
Yeah.
us if we do the contract?
What was agreed on?
If there's a
last-
fire or whatever happens, injury?
You all agreed on the budget, which was that they're responsible of the program. We're running the program, though. It was approved that we're running the program.
And they were going to reimburse.
And they're going to reimburse.
Before a decision's made, I'd like to reflect on the last meeting and watch that video and see that conversation again.
How soon do we need this?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting to, within this
now,
week, we
right?
got to sign this firework contract.
Then whatever was discussed in the last meeting, watch it and go for it.
We may not
I don't
have,
wanna
well, I guess to that point, I
reverse the
guess we
decision.
may not have specifically
talk about
voted
it.
for it at that time, whether, that may not even be part of the discussion.
I want to be sure of that.
Do we have the minutes available right now?
Well, we've got a whole pile of attorneys sitting outside, don't we?
let's
11:45.
11:45. Okay, so
Well,
let's just,
saying.
let's look at the video, what was agreed.
And what we voted on.
And what we voted on. And then we execute.
I do have one thing I want to add, just because I do see the resident in the audience. He did send an email, Scott, regarding the furniture in North Village. I did shoot off an email requesting if we can go ahead and put that on today's agenda to just discuss it and have Todd recap. I know Todd stepped out.
Well, Todd went out there yesterday and moved some stuff.
No, I suggested for it publicly to be stated because that's not the only resident with that concern. So once it's said publicly, everybody can see it and reference it, as opposed to a private email that was just with the board.
Okay.
So if you want to recap on what Todd said, so it's publicly stated.
Sure, Todd moved some of the furniture around. The umbrellas are not going in the table, so we bought umbrellas that go into the ground. They're placed temporarily to make sure that residents there are happy with that location. And once we make sure that everything looks the way it's supposed to, then we'll put them in permanently.
And this is regarding North Village Pavilion.
Right.
Can I go back to the fireworks? Sorry. My concern still is if something goes wrong, somebody, these fireworks go off, the people have been killed that have set them off, they've been injured. Is there an indemnification clause? I mean, have the attorneys looked at that contract and make sure that CROA, the resident of CROA is protected?
Well, CROA has to do the permitting through CDD. CROA is running the rest of the event. Part of that event is sponsored fireworks. At the end of if someone got hurt, all parties involved are going to be named in the lawsuit.
Well, there's clauses that you can put in there to protect yourself.
I think the indemnification is probably going to be more on the firework provider.
That's what I mean, the fireworks
Yeah.
section.
Right.
That's all I'm.
Steve, that does, all vendors are set up with appropriate insurance. Okay, so they have to provide their insurance carriers.
Right, for us to enter into an agreement.
It is the same agreement CROA signed twice before.
So has the lawyer reviewed this contract?
So there's nothing has
We don't have the
changed.
contract yet because Steve wanted to bring it up here first.
Yeah, so it's the one that we assigned in 2016 and that we also did for Founder's Day in 2016. So it's the same firework vendor, same contract. They're established as a vendor through CCMC. They submitted all the paperwork to be a vendor through CCMC. So it would be a legitimate process to sign it.
Do we have a contract in hand yet for this year's 4th of July fireworks?
I don't have it in hand yet, do you?
And it was,
Because we hadn't discussed it.
Right.
it was requested by who? Who was that contract requested by?
Well,
Lexington
Lexington's
or
been the one
CCMC?
that's communicated with them, but we will make sure before it's presented for signature that it's the same contract, that it's not, nothing has changed.
So before we decide any signatures or anything, I mean, we got to see the contract.
Yeah, agreed. No,
I just think this conversation is very premature right now. It needs to be a prepared conversation.
Let's put a rush on it.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know that there's no premature now at all when it comes to 4th of July.
Let's see the contract. Let's see the contract.
Let's get the contract, let's just have Tom Slayton or somebody in his office do a quick review of the contract, and then we're covered. And that way, we've dealt with it. And we'll look at the minutes. I will do set an agenda for Monday's workshop. It will be the items left over from here. I will add daily invoices, so we can talk about it in big picture scenario. Anything else I need to add for Monday? I mean, I hope we don't need full 2 hours, but we may.
When we're talking, it was on today, when we're talking about the various committee process, and the old resolutions are in our packets, what is the understanding about the new resolution for 2019-20?
The committee conversation was not supposed to have anything to do with the old resolution.
Okay.
It was supposed to be the concept conversation about how we want to proceed.
Okay.
And I think if we're talking, that's going to take a little while. The board book's going to take a little while.
So
what we will do is we will have the new assignment sheet for Monday's meeting so that we can all say, this is what everybody thought was agreed to, or make this change. So that way we can bring finalization to that. So that's what we would do.
So we can set the stage for...
We would set the stage.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Yeah, I could put it on. Do you want to turn off the,
I don't know if you saw that. I didn't even look at it. Okay. Just a
Tell you what.
second.
Once we're done, let's compare notes, because I think I was writing Robert's where I should have had